Welcome in to week 2 of Gridiron Eve. I'm John Vogel. You're the host of the show. And today we had a little bit of a sad thing that happened today. Our good co-host Mike Hoosman is not going to be able to join the show, and as a result, I am forced to carry this on my own. Um, we wish Mike the best today, and he should be back next week. Everything should be back to normal once we get around to it. So he submitted his picks, and we have opened up everything to, you know, basically have a chance to get people in the studio and talk about everything going on. Oh, and I probably put out the wrong link. Oops. So I'm going to fix that real quick before we get started. Stick this up on the Twitter because there's people already kind of yelling at me a little bit about putting on the wrong link. So this is the link. You got a good. It should be good tonight, guys. We got some good picks. We got a great slate of games, obviously, that it will be coming up tomorrow. We got a good one going on right now. Louisville is playing UCF right now, and Louisville came into it as 5.5 point underdogs, or 6.5 point, I think, at some point. So make sure that I hope you made sure to bet on Louisville on that one, because I think they're up, if I'm not mistaken, right now. I'm pulling that up to make sure. Oh, they're tied at 7 right now. Okay, they were up 7-0. So, anyways, well, let's get into everything that we're going to talk about here, and we're going to get started. I made my picks, and yeah, come into the studio, man. To the studio. There we go. All right. Looks like John Cronenberg is trying to join us, who's really a good Broncos guy. Does a lot of good Broncos coverage. And having some issues with this. This should have been the invite link. I don't know why we're having issues with this today. Oh, okay. He deleted it, so he's probably coming in. All right, cool. So Mike submitted his picks this morning. The lines might be just a little bit off, and I'm going to try to correct them as we go if they are. But I have a lot of issues with Mike's picks this week, believe it or not, because normally we're pretty spot on, but this week for some reason he was just way off, and I'm not really sure why. So hopefully he'll be back next week to kind of defend himself on this, because I thought he made some pretty egregious ones here. The first one that he submitted, I think it's a good one. It's Iowa 3.5 point favorites over Iowa State. And let's talk about this a little bit. Iowa just played one of the worst games offensively ever of all time. And that being said, it was rough, right? Because they scored a single field goal, and I think that came off a turnover, and they scored 2 safeties and won 7-3. So they have a great defense, as always. This team is always loaded in the trenches. They have one of the best linebackers in the country right now, Jack Campbell. They're loaded on defense, as they always are. But their offense is the question. I mean, it's the most outdated college football offense ever. They're still trying to run 1980s NFL football, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work anymore. You got to update everything and be more modern with everything that you want to do. So, Iowa's kind of in this interesting spot where they're going to be playing Iowa State. And I think we've kind of forgotten about Matt Campbell as a whole, right? Like, we've forgotten just how good of a coach Matt Campbell is, because Iowa State hasn't quite been up to par where they were. They weren't competing for, the Big 12 championship over the last couple of years. So we've kind of forgotten how good of a coach Matt Campbell is. And so if Matt Campbell's a great coach, then wouldn't you say it would be fair if this 3.5 point favorite that Iowa has over Iowa State, in annual game, obviously this is a big game for both schools, maybe that's just a little bit off? And it's just because I'm thinking out loud here. Iowa State, they lost their quarterback, but they have some offensive weapons. And they scored points on offense last week. And I haven't seen anything from Iowa that would suggest that they're going to put it all together and they're going to come out and they're going to have a good offensive game. I know it's a rivalry game. I get that. I'm just saying, like, who do they have on offense? And if they don't have anybody on offense, then, who's going to score the points for them? You're going to rely on the defense to score all the points again? I hope not. I really hope not, because that's going to be really difficult. And so here's where I kind of want to get into, right? And pardon me as I'm adjusting this, trying to get this figured out. All right. So Iowa State has a receiver that I absolutely love, Xavier Hutchinson. This guy is going to be a NFL X wide receiver. He's really good. And I really like this guy. I know that they lost their quarterback, but there's something in me that's just kind of saying, go with the underdogs here. Bet on Iowa State. And so I'm putting 5 points on that, Mike. I hope you're listening. I hope you're doing well enough to listen. So I'm putting 5 points on that. I don't agree with that. And you know what? You should tweet at me and tell me what picks of mine you don't like, because we're going to get started with my picks here. All right. So my first pick that I submitted is, I'll be honest, I'm a little bold this week. Okay. And so I started with Arkansas 8.5 over South Carolina. And I feel like Mike's going to take issue with that. That's okay. Mike can definitely take issue with me on that. So here's the thing is, I know that South Carolina is improved this year and they hit the transfer portal, heavy and hard. But Arkansas took on a pretty good Cincinnati team last week, and they won by a touchdown. They won by what they were supposed to, and it was right there on the line. And I like Sam Pittman. I like this offense. I like the defense. The defense was way better than the score would suggest. I think that they kind of got a couple lucky breaks, and there were some penalties that should have been called against them last week. In review, looking at that tape. So one guy that I do want to point out as an NFL guy in Arkansas is not really being talked about is the Georgia Tech transfer, Jordan Dominic, who had a dominant week last week. He was almost unstoppable on tape. He only played 14 snaps. He's on the rotation right now. I think he's going to see a bigger role. I think that there's going to, especially as the season progresses, but I think that there's a lot there to it with him, and he's going to be a really good player at the next level. He was great already at Georgia Tech. He won the Blickenoff Player of the Week one week 2020 during the COVID season, I believe, and just overall looked really good. And so he's continued with that up to this point. I like him. I think that he's going to do well, and I have a lot of faith in Sam Pittman and that group as a whole. So I like Arkansas at 8.5 over South Carolina. I think they can win comfortably by 10 to 14. I get it. Spencer Rattler's there and everything else, but this Arkansas team is really good. And everybody really in the West, for the most part, I guess you could kind of scratch off LSU after that week, and Mississippi State maybe a little bit too. But they've been really good. Everybody in that conference, in that division, is really good, and they've been outpacing the East up to this point, and I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. So I like Arkansas here by 8.5. Now Mike's second pick that we're going to get into is Baylor. He likes Baylor as the underdogs, 2.5 over BYU. And so I thought that Baylor was the favorite coming into this week, and they are absolutely not anymore. I think coming into the week, maybe before last week was played, they were the Baylor was the favorite, but now they are not. BYU is the favorite by 2.5. So that is the current line right now, according to ESPN.com. Here's the thing is, I disagree with this. I'm going to put 5 points on this too. And the reason is Baylor, they have a good team. They're a very good defense, but I don't think they're quite prepared to face the firepower that BYU has. BYU has some of the most underrated players in the entire country. People don't realize how loaded BYU is this year. I think I was saying this last week, honestly, because as we were talking about them playing South Florida. They have a really good quarterback. This guy is an NFL prospect, and he is going to probably be drafted if he enters the draft this year. Jaren Hall is amazing. He has some real athletes at the receiver position. Nakoa Pua last week killed it. Okay, he was awesome. They brought in the transfer from Cal, the running back, Christopher Brooks. They have a great offense, and they scored a lot of points last week because of this offense. This offense is really awesome. And so because of that, I like them in the situation, because when I look at the matchup, it's quite even for the most part until you get to the quarterback position. I think there's a lot of answers that Baylor has to get from that position that BYU already has answered. And so I like BYU here. I like them straight up. I'm actually going to be betting on them straight up. Uh, I'll bet on the line. I was planning on betting on them if they were the underdogs, anyways, straight up. But I'll bet on the line. I like this. I like the matchup they have here. They're at home, so they'll be playing in Utah. Baylor will have to travel out there. It's a late kick. It's 9:15, 10:15 Eastern. So very late kick, and it's not something that Baylor is typically accustomed to. So I just, all the factors, all the indicators to me point advantage BYU, and I like them in this matchup. And I think BYU could potentially be a top 10 team this year. They're that loaded. They're that deep. So I like them here. It's going to be a really great matchup because this is BYU is entering the Big 12. I believe they're supposed to enter in 2024. So this is a preview of, you could say, of these two teams in a conference matchup. So I like this. I like this a lot. So we're up to 10 points here that I'm putting on Mike's picks, and hopefully Mike will be posting if he disagrees with some of my picks. So the next one that I have is Tennessee 6.5 over Pittsburgh. And this one is a little bit bold too, especially because Tennessee is ranked 24th right now. They weren't ranked in the top 25 in the preseason, and they blew the brakes off of Ball State, which doesn't mean too much. Whereas Pitt ended up in a dogfight with West Virginia, had to come back, won the game, off the tipped pass, and then managed to stop them on 4th and long as they tried to drive the 2-minute drive at the end of the game. Thrilling game, great game. So they're going to take on Tennessee on that same turf where they just won. And Tennessee is a much better team than they were last year. If you look at that matchup, right, from last year, there's a really good chance that they come out of this. That if Hendon Hooker starts that game for Tennessee last year in this matchup, they win that game. It was a dogfight. It was down to the end. Both those teams were so even. And you look at Joe Milton overthrowing what it felt like a million touchdown passes, just again, just overthrowing, wide open dudes deep down the field by 10 yards. And so they don't have that issue this year, and Hendon Hooker, he has a tendency, he'll overthrow people too. But not like Milton went out there and did last year. And so I like this because Tennessee has almost everybody back. Literally. Almost everyone is back in Tennessee. Pitt has lost a lot of weapons, and I like Tennessee in the matchup here by 6.5. I think that they can win comfortably by a touchdown, maybe 2 over Pittsburgh, and they're going to ascend into the top 25. And so it looks like our first person is entering into the show with the opportunity, Mr. John Cronenberg. Is that how you say that? I've never spoken with you, good sir.
Yeah, I've watched your work though and read a lot of it, so I'm a big fan. My last name is Cronenberg, by the way, but you were close enough. How are you doing today?
Okay. I mean, I'm here, so had to kind of adjust with this last minute. I guess it wasn't exactly last minute, but I knew Mike wasn't going to be on. I had to come up with something that would be better because I don't think I can carry a show by myself. I think I like having someone there to bounce ideas.
I think you could. So. Come on, man.
Well, we're finding out right now as I'm struggling through this. So you covered Broncos. You cover a lot of college football, and I've read some of your work too, just because we've interacted on Twitter and stuff. And I respect the work and I respect everything that you do. I'm not entirely sure what college football stuff that you do, so just please enlighten me on it because I don't think I've come across anything. I've come across your Broncos stuff.
Yeah, I'm new to kind of the college football game. Just started doing some radio with Mile High Sports. So really just starting to get into football, college football that is, and I am a college football, but really excited to cover. She's great, fantastic woman to speak with. They're getting ready for Middle Tennessee, and then there's CU versus Air Force, which is going to be a great game. double digits at this point. So they're looking good, and CU, they have a lot to decide for their future going on.
I like that quarterback at CU a lot.
Is my mic going
I can't
okay?
think of his name off. Do what now? You're kind of coming in and
I
out.
think I'm a
John.
little delayed, so forgive me there. I think I'm cutting in and out, so I'm just going to exit. I'm sorry about that.
No worries, dude. No worries at all. No, I like that quarterback at Colorado. I can't think of his name right now. I got to pull up my Phil Steele and cheat a little bit here. As I was it was an agent or somebody that had told me and asked me to take a look at him and tell him what I thought. It was Brendan Lewis. That's right, Brendan Lewis. He's kind of a fun little kid, kind of like a DTR.
Brendan. Yeah, when it comes to Brendan Lewis, and again, if I'm breaking out, please, show me the door. Brendan Lewis is a very safe quarterback. He does a lot of high percentage balls. And the big problem with him is he's unable to, at this time, kind of go further when it comes to the passing game. He's averaging, sub 200 yards games most of the time. He's not going to be breaking 300 yards. You're not going to see that out of him. So that's been the big debate for CU. Is it JT Stroud, or is it going to be are you going to stick with the same guy with Lewis? And when it comes to Lewis, I think most Buffs fans have kind of given up, and that's where you see some division. A lot of people want to see Stroud in there and be able to kind of push the ball further versus kind of just staying meandering and going 3 and out too often and relying on your defense too much.
Yeah, and JT Stroud, the issue with him, because I remember him at Tennessee, was really just consistency. So I think the same issue is going to apply here. He didn't hit the deep ball well, even in the spring games and stuff. There wasn't too much going for him, and I think that's why he transferred out and he was looking for another option. But I think when I look at Lewis, I see a DTR, I see a Tyler Huntley type, and you just need to give him the time to continue to get those reps and develop. I think that's the main thing with him, the main key. That it's difficult to do because especially right now, like the Pac-12 is kind of it's breaking in front of our very eyes, and we don't know if that conference is going to survive. So there's a lot of uncertainty with all of that too. So it's like, well, if we have to go join another conference, and let's say it's the Big Ten, or maybe the Big 12 comes along and asks us to join, as they continue to expand, you kind of get into this point where it's like, well, if we go in here with the wrong guy, we're going to start at the bottom, and we're probably not going to get out of the bottom. And I think that's the biggest concern with Colorado right now in their quarterback position. I think you just got to stick with Brendan Lewis. There's enough there. I know that the consistency's not there yet, but that type of quarterback has been successful, especially if they have the time to develop. So I like Lewis kind of sitting around there for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you want to have that kind of game plan, I think that what they're going to do is kind of with their coordinator and Samford, they're going to switch to a little bit of zone scheme, try to help Lewis do some play action a little bit more, and free him up a little bit more. So definitely, there's a lot of positivity that can be done with this multiple set kind of offense that does a lot of looks.
All right, so
what
let's
teams
change gears here real quick, because I've got these picks that I've got to try to get through. So do you bet at all, John? Or are you more of a clean guy per se?
I'm more of a clean guy, but I'd love to learn more. So let me into your world. Let me in.
All right. So do you understand basically how a line works?
I get the gist of it. It's if it's -5.5, like you see with Florida and Kentucky, if it's 6, then you would win, and if it's less than 6, obviously you would lose. Am I correct
Yeah.
there?
Okay.
Or
Yeah, you're right on. You're right on. Okay, so we've got
if not,
I've
elaborate.
I've gone through the first couple picks here with Mike and my picks. I've been sitting here trying to carry this thing. Houston plus 2.5 over Texas Tech is Mike's third pick. And so Houston kind of comes into this game, and they just had the 3 overtime win over UTSA this week on the road. Went in there, Clayton Tune really took it down to the wire as the quarterback. He's he's been a senior, he's been there forever, and UTSA is not a bad team. UTSA, that was one of the things Mike and I were kind of crossed about. He liked Houston, I liked UTSA. Ultimately, he came out on top. But the Texas Tech comes into this game. They're missing their starting quarterback, Tyler Show. He's out, and he'll be out for the next couple weeks. And it's kind of another rebuilding year for them. So, because they brought in Matt Wells in 2020 as the head coach. He goes off to he gets fired last year, midway through the year, and it came out of nowhere. It's very surprising. And so it's another new head coach, and it's a second game. So Houston, surprisingly, is still the underdog here, and I'm kind of leaning with Houston on this. I'm kind of agreeing with Mike on this one.
I would agree with you guys as well. Houston, to me, even though they may have not had the best showing in their first week for some, I still think they're a potent team. And like you said, if you're missing your starting quarterback, there's going to be a lot of issues. So I'm with you on there, and I think you guys are on point.
So my third pick is I like Florida 5.5 over Kentucky. And this is kind of surprising because last week I came up here and I talked about Florida, and I said, I don't know what I have with Florida. It's a mixed bag. And they were going into playing 7th-ranked Utah, and they were playing them at home. But it was a night game, primetime game. I'm like, I don't know what they have. Brand new head coach coming in. I know Billy Napier. He was an absolute genius at Louisiana. And now he's coming in here to Florida with, Anthony Richardson, who people were projecting this offseason as a top 5 pick. And I was laughing at them going, that's funny. That's wow. You did the same thing with Emory Jones the year before. And Anthony Richardson came out here and balled out against Utah. He looked awesome. And so now I'm sitting here kind of going, now I have a better idea what Florida is. And it seems like Napier has really done something special with that program. Now I compare them to Kentucky. This is Will Levis's last year as the quarterback at Kentucky. He's going to be going off probably to the pros. I was forced to take him with my first pick in our fantasy draft, college football fantasy draft, because basically he threatened us if we didn't take him in the first round. He was going to do something, and it wasn't going to be good for any of us except the guy that picked him. So I was left with the last pick of this and had to take him, which was a little surprising to me because I wanted to go with someone else. I did not have him at the top of my list, but I also didn't really have a choice in the matter. So I don't think that he has the weapons that he needs to go up against to outscore Florida right now. And so I like Florida by 7, and the line's 5.5, and I think that's generous. And really, it just kind of it comes down to this has always been a really traditionally difficult game for both teams. It's one of the biggest rivalries in the SEC. They always play this time the second week, and you never know what's going to come out of the gate. But Anthony Richardson was that dominant last week, and that was against the 7th-ranked team. Utah's no joke. I'm believing in him enough to say, yeah, they're going to beat Kentucky, I think, this week by a touchdown.
Yeah, Utah was definitely a favorite to take the Pac-12. They're definitely a top team, a tough team. So seeing what Florida did to them was very impressive. And so coming out against Kentucky, to me, I have some more doubts on Kentucky still on my end. So for me, Florida is also kind of the pick there. I wish I could argue with you, but you're speaking my language here. But I do want to see more from from Kentucky in terms of the quarterback. And for me, I haven't watched enough Kentucky, so I'm excited to watch that game actually.
Yeah, and so they have some really great defenders all over that team, especially up front. JJ Weaver. I love the defensive tackle number 8, Octavius Oxendine, I believe. His dad was a NCO in the Army and kind of instilled that discipline in him, and he's a real fun guy to watch. And then there's another dude DeAndre Square playing linebacker there too. So they have some good defenders. They have some good pieces there. I just don't think it's enough. I'm really wondering who's going to slow down Florida this year. If you're not a top tier team, what are you going to do with Anthony Richardson? I think that's the biggest question. So I do like Florida here. I think 5.5 is. I think that's a very mild line. I really think that it's going to be more than that, and a touchdown is comfortable. So if you want to take an alt line on that, go ahead, go 6.5. It's probably going to move to there by tomorrow, anyways. So, now Mike's 4th pick here is really interesting, and it's because he decided to go with Louisville, which is this game's going on right now. Louisville plus 6.5 over UCF. Now, with 11:31 to go in the second, according to my ESPN pulled up right here, UCF is up 14-7. Obviously, last week Louisville had a really rough week. I mean, I thought they were going to come out and destroy Syracuse, and it was the absolute opposite. Syracuse destroyed them, and this year that we were anticipating from Malik Cunningham kind of being like a, big numbers, Lamar Jackson-ish, because he's very similar in his skill set, didn't happen. It just didn't. And so here they are, 6 days later playing their second game of the season on the road against Central Florida. And this is a Gus Malzahn team that they've got some good pieces across the board. He took Louisville at plus 6.5. I'm not trying to sit here and say, well, the game's already started and it's not going well, so you're wrong, Mike. But I'm not sure I would have taken that one.
Yeah, I mean, for me there, my partner with MHS on the radio, he's a UCF guy, so he's been pumping them for me, and so I have definitely felt that UCF has a great program with Coach Monsanto, and for me, that's obviously just kind of an easy one. It started here at 5 Mountain for me, and I was watching a little bit of it, and I see that Louisville's going to have issues this year. I think really Syracuse is not a team you want to have issues with. I think that's one you have to take.
No, it's predicated on the trenches for them right now. And I knew that they were losing a couple pieces from last year. And I guess we were just expecting Malik Cunningham to take a step forward as well. And we haven't seen that at all yet. In fact, he doesn't look like he's even at the same caliber he was last year. So that's concerning. I didn't think that losing some of the speed that they did would hurt them as much because they have so much speed. Losing Tyler Harrell to Alabama and I think they lost a running back as well, if I remember correctly. They had to bring in Tion Evans from Tennessee. They brought in there's another receiver they had already that's just ungodly fast is too. I didn't think speed was going to be such an issue for them, but it seems like they're missing these pieces that they had last year, and Malik Cunningham is taking a step back because of it.
Yeah, and again, it sounds like you have the knowledge on that one more than I do. I'm more predicated on Colorado.
It's funny.
Yes,
I've gotten to this point now where I can just watch this stuff so much that it's just it's all that I'm doing right now. And I'm cool with that.
You're absorbing everything
as much as I possibly can, every bit of it. So I'll switch gears back with you and go to Colorado. So Colorado State, or just Colorado Buffaloes?
I went to CU, so obviously I'm a big fan of the Buffs. It's been a rough ride here, obviously, with losing Coach Tucker to Michigan State. That was difficult for the program, and then you brought in Dorrell, and honestly, he started with the COVID period. Then the next year, there was a transfer of some power, some issues. So this year they're even saying it's kind of like his first class that he's getting in there. So this is for me it's a young team that has a long ways to go. But even more exciting for me is actually CSU. Like I said, they have 60 new players actually on their roster, 11 transfers from Nevada specifically. That's from Jay Norvell coming over from Nevada and becoming CSU's
that was something very wild.
Coach, and switching to that air raid offense. It's going to be exciting. Yeah. But it sounds like the family made the right decision. Like I said, I've spoken to Kim Norvell recently, and the family said they're very happy in Fort Collins. The move went well, and really the community seems to be really kind of gathering around them very, very nicely. So CSU has some great things going for them, and the Air Force Academy, I think for the first time, you know, in a long time, you're getting a lot of excitement in Colorado from them. You saw them get some votes in the AP top 25. I think they got 8. So that's really exciting for the state of Colorado to have some of these teams outside of CU kind of start to perform and start seeing at least some growth and development, just because, Colorado isn't a great hub for high school recruits. So they do have to go out to California and go to Texas and compete with those schools on a big level. And they don't have the NIL deals to offer that are similar to those schools.
Well, I mean, you could, I would think, if marijuana wasn't something that was so nationally looked down upon, I think you could find a way to make some, NIL deals happen with that advantage. But I could be wrong. I thought there was a lot of money in that out there. But no, I think I kind of look at is
that could be enough.
I think with Jay Norvell, the thing is, it's like anybody over Steve Adazio is welcome at Colorado State, because Steve Adazio is one of the most difficult people to work for in college football, one of the most difficult people to work with, and it's surprising that he's lasted as long as he has as a head coach.
Yeah. I think I'm having a little bit of audio issues, so forgive me.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to drop out here. That's on my end. I'm very sorry for that. But I really appreciate you having me on for these few minutes, and I'm very sorry, but I'll hop in the comments and talk to you there.
No worries, man. No worries. Take it easy, man. Appreciate you taking the time to jump on.
Thank you so much.
John Cronenberg. Yeah, we've interacted a lot on Twitter over the last year, I want to say. I think I was still in Kuwait, finishing up my deployment when he found me and started interacting with some different stuff. And yeah, his stuff's really good. I've always enjoyed the things that I've always seen him come across with. He's got a really good, fresh take and unique perspective, I think, on the Denver Broncos. So it's interesting. I didn't know he was doing college right now, so that's good to know. I guess we'll get back into these picks, boy. Another pick that we've got from Mike here, and it's Texas A&M minus 17.5 over Appalachian State. And Mike. I'm not sure about this one either. And here's my thing. I was hyping Texas A&M this year. I said 4th best team in my preseason votes and everything. So yeah, I should be agreeing with you 100% on this. I really should. But what I saw last week was Chase Bryce has taken a step forward as a quarterback. His receivers, albeit they're all pretty much brand spanking new, outside of I think Marlon Williams, who was there last year, they look good. And that offense, the running back group, really good. And what I didn't see from Texas A&M last week against Sam Houston State, a team that they should have destroyed, which I guess technically they did, 31-0 or 35-0, whatever it was. It had a long break too, so that's kind of an excuse, but whatever. This is a team that offense should have scored a lot of points against, and it didn't. So that concerns me. It really does. And it's because we've seen this offense struggle so many times before that we get to this point and they're struggling again. It's another Jimbo Fisher offense that's struggling, and they're not clicking, and they're missing on big plays, and they're not scoring points like they should be against little teams that you would expect. And I'm sitting here kind of going, this is not a little team. Appalachian State, they are a school that goes into big schools and knocks them over. They're not afraid of the moment, and they haven't been since they beat Michigan in that iconic upset game. They have not been afraid of the moment. They took down North Carolina, if you remember, in Chapel Hill. They took them down. And so this is kind of the thing is I'm looking at this, 17, I guess the line might be a little bit bigger now. It's 19. It's 19.0 right now is the line by Texas A&M. I just don't see this at all. I don't. I think that Appalachian State has a really good shot to score with Texas A&M. And I understand that their defense, Texas A&M's defense, is miles better than North Carolina. But here's the thing, man. It's that offense was so good last week. Texas A&M's offense was not good last week. And Appalachian State, they have defenders on there. I was looking at Nick Hampton today, getting my scouting report for him. He's probably going to be a top 5, 3-4 outside linebacker in this upcoming class. You've got Trey Cobb. And I know that there's a lot of people that like Trey Cobb in the league. Brandon Harrington's another linebacker on that team. Stephen Jones at the corner position. I mean, they have pieces on that defense right now. And they didn't show up too well against North Carolina. Granted, that was a wild game. And so I guess what you're saying is, are you trying to tell me that Sam Houston State's defense is better than Appalachian State's? No, I'm not buying that. I'm just not. No, I don't think so at all. So that's where I like. That's what I would do. And I would go with Appalachian State, especially because that line's continue. There must be some big money pouring in on it because that line is continuing to go up. I would definitely jump on that, all over that. My next pick that I had, I guess I skipped my fourth pick. Oops. Was I took USC 8.5 over Stanford, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I like them over Stanford right now because this is a really sorry, I hate the computer. USC is under Lincoln Riley now, obviously, as we've heard all off season. They are so much better than they've been in a long time. We saw flashes of all of this, all the pieces coming together this week against Rice, which Rice is Rice. It's a little school, and they haven't exactly been relevant on a national level in a long time. If ever, I don't know if they ever have, to be honest. I don't know my college football history as well as I really should, I guess. So 8.5 is so little. It's such a small number for the points because Stanford has not been the school that we remember them being, because we remember when we think of Stanford, we think of Andrew Luck, right? And Jim Harbaugh leading that team up and then being competitive, being physical, being up to the point. The problem that they've had, okay? The problem that Stanford has had is that they are an academic school. You have to have the grades to get into that school. And there are several schools like this that are struggling right now because of the transfer portal. So players are leaving Stanford, and schools like Vanderbilt, schools like Stanford are struggling to bring players back in through the transfer portal because they don't have the grades they need. And that's a problem, right? Because everyone else is using the transfer portal. They're pulling players left and right from these guys, and they don't have the grades on a lot of these guys. And the players that do have the grades they can pull in, they don't go to that school. They go to others. Jared Verse could have gone to Stanford if he wanted, but he got an offer from Florida State. Why would you turn down an offer from Florida State? He said it himself. He took it because it's Florida State and the marketing, the brand value. and then he goes out there against LSU and blocks a field goal and gets 2 sacks. These are the type of players that they're missing out on at Stanford, at Vanderbilt, at these academic schools that are not finding a way to hit the transfer portal, don't have the marketability to bring people in. Northwestern, they've done it with a little bit of success, not much, but they've been able to get guys in the transfer portal because there's been so much stability in that program. So if there's guys, that they don't have great, offers, they'll take a Northwestern. Notre Dame has been doing the same thing. They've been able to hit the transfer portal a little bit and bring in some of the better guys. So I think what Stanford has dealt with is they haven't brought anybody in through the transfer portal, and they've lost a ton of players. So that's why they've struggled over the last couple of years, because as the transfer portal has gotten bigger, as players have been able to leave schools and just go wherever they want, which is fine. I totally think that should be the case with college football. There never should have been any restrictions. That helps. That hurts Stanford. That helps USC in this matchup because they do not have the depth that USC has built in, since Lincoln Riley got there. Lincoln Riley literally walked in that school and talked about how he had to flip 30 roster spots immediately because they weren't good enough to play at USC. And that might sound harsh and that might sound difficult, but that's what he wants. He wants a winning culture. He wants a winning program. So he's not going to keep guys on these scholarships that don't need to be there and aren't going to be a part of his plans. So he's I guess you could say he's doing them a favor, really, and saying, hey, get out of here because you're going to sit around here and waste your time. I'm telling you that straight up right now, so you don't have to deal with that in the future. And you find out the hard way. So I think that's good, right? I think that was a good thing, and I think that's what they needed to do. Now, the next thing that's really big here about this game is Stanford does not have an offense right now, and USC has a defense. So the real question is, Stanford is probably not going to hold USC to under 30 points, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't think that Stanford's going to score more than 20 on them either. And I think that's the issue. So 8.5 is a very, very small number, and I'm really surprised when I look at that line. It's still 8.5 as of now. I'm looking right at it on ESPN.com. That game will be on ABC, 7:30 Eastern tomorrow. But 8.5, man, you got to jump all over that. We're talking about USC. We're talking about Lincoln Riley with his star quarterback Caleb Williams. They scored 66 last week on Rice. They can score 40 on Stanford. I think they will. I think that's actually that's a really good number for that. The last game that I had to pick on was it's one that I guess some people are a little bit hesitant to, but I think you can make a lot of money by betting on this game. And that's why I'm telling you about it. We've got Wake Forest favored by 13.5 over Vanderbilt. And so the thing about Vanderbilt this year is they've looked decent to start the year. They went in there into Hawaii in week 0. And, Mike and I were on the show. We were talking about it week 0. And we were talking about how the time and the 5-hour difference between Nashville and Hawaii would play a factor, and how we were talking about, they need to put a big lead on before Hawaii can put those points back on in the second half when it starts to creep into midnight, 1 a.m. local time for the Vanderbilt players. And what ended up happening instead after a rough couple first series is Mike Wright is a quarterback. He is a dude. Okay, this guy looks like he's got Lamar Jackson-esque speed. I don't think he has the arm, but as an athlete, this dude is a beast. And so he came out there and pretty much, the defense definitely helped. The defense had a couple fumble returns for touchdowns. Hawaii, in overall, just played terrible. Vanderbilt looked really good that week. Then they played Elon last week, and they won 45-23, I think was the final on that. So Elon is not a school that should be competing with Vanderbilt like that. So that week 0, whatever, kind of held up, and so that kind of looks bad for looking at how Vanderbilt's progressing as a team. They look like they took a step back. Now, the biggest thing about Wake Forest, right, and this is why I think the line is kind of here, because Sam Hartman last month, the NFL prospect Wake Forest quarterback that I've talked about. I talked about this offense that they built for him last year when I was on Football Sapient. We talked about the scheme that they had built, and it was a really great design, holding the RPO until the very last second and letting him use his fast release and arm talent and all that stuff to make things happen straight off of a quick RPO. So that's what they've done. And what he was announced last month that he was going to miss upwards of 2 months with a blood clot issue. And because of that, Wake Forest's expectations dropped dramatically, because they were talking about he wouldn't be back till potentially week 8. And that was going to be brutal if that was the case. Now, it was announced this week he's back. He's cleared medically. So he will be starting against Vanderbilt. He does not have the game. He's missed a lot of time because he's just been cleared medically. And so I think that's probably why the spread right here is only 13.5, because there's a lot of uncertainty about Hartman and if he's ready to play. I think he is. It's Vanderbilt. Wake Forest as a team. Guys, 13.5, jump all over this thing before the big money comes in here and moves it. All right, because Wake Forest is going to score points on Vanderbilt. There's no doubt about it. They scored a whole lot last week too. This is an 11 a.m. kick, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, where I am, on the SEC network, which is, I guess the SEC network got it because Vanderbilt's playing at home. This game will be in Nashville. This is big, guys. This is something that. This is like easy money. This is like they are giving you this money right now, because Vanderbilt doesn't have the defense that's going to keep up with Wake Forest. They don't. Let's be honest. If Vanderbilt was playing an RPO team right now, they would get down to 14-0 hole and be chasing them the rest of the time. And that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. They're going to get down to a 14-0 hole. They've started slow in both the games they've played this year. They're going to get in a 14-0 hole, and they're going to be chasing Wake Forest the rest of the game. I really think that. I've sincerely believed that. So that's what y'all need to jump on. I'm telling you. This is huge. Like 13.5. Vanderbilt, all right. We're going to pull out the cheat sheet here. We're going to look at Phil Steele, right? And just look at the last 5 years where Vanderbilt has played an out-of-conference Power 5 team. Stanford, they were 12-point underdogs. They lost 41-23, so by 18 points. That was last year. They also had East Tennessee State, Colorado State, which, Colorado State, they were 7-point underdogs. They won by 3, so congrats. That was great. They were 21-point favorites to East Tennessee State. They won by 20. Didn't even cover that spread. All right, so you go back to 2019, because the 2020 season, COVID year, they didn't get all of that conference games. Purdue lost 42-24 by 18. Northern Illinois, blah, blah, okay, cool, whatever. UNLV, 2018. Notre Dame, okay, well, they lost by 5. They covered that one. Notre Dame was also overrated at the time, but that's beside the point. That year, that was bad. So my point is, Vanderbilt in the modern transfer portal era does not cover. They don't. So I understand that the books are worried about Sam Hartman and how ready he's going to be, because he missed pretty much the entirety of summer camp with the guys and hasn't played, in 2 months or a month, I guess, at this point. But I don't think that matters too much. He's got a lot of his pieces back. That team is pretty much together. A.T. Perry on the outside is a beast wide receiver. He's going to be an X in the NFL as well. He looks great. I like him. In this defense looked good last week. Granted, they're playing VMI, and VMI is not exactly, an offensive powerhouse, to say the least. But that's the thing is, I think their defense looked fine. Their offense with the backup quarterback was fine. You just plug Hartman in here, and they're going to win comfortably by 20. I think 20 is it might be more than that. So jump all over this 13, man. Jump all over this 13.5. That is free money that they are begging you to come and take. FanDuel, is who I use. I don't know if you're living in a state that's not it's not quite legal yet, then I guess you got your bet online. But FanDuel so far has been the best experience that I've had with any of the books. They've been right on point with everything. So that's pretty much the games right now. Looking at the slate at late kind of things that might be helpful. So Notre Dame is favored by 20.5 over Marshall. Because they're going to be on national television because Notre Dame is that kind of school where they have that kind of brand power. And that's that deal that they have with the deal that they have in place with NBC. The television deal has been huge for them. It's helped them tremendously over the last several years. Especially with their brand power. Like, their brand power is great. And I mean, they're 0-1 right now. They just lost to Ohio State. They're still in the top 10. I mean, name me the last time a school had that happen to them. That's brand power right there, baby. So Marshall is not a pushover team right now. They've just moved over to the Sun Belt Conference from the Conference USA, and they have a Saban disciple in Coach Huff over there right now. And he's been I knew one of the players that was playing there last year. He'd played with them for a while, Xavier Gaines. Shout out to my man. I wish you were playing in the league. He had some size issues that the NFL didn't quite like as much as I did. But anyways, so Xavier Gaines was telling me last year about the change of culture in that organization just in that 1 year where Coach Huff took over, because Coach Huff's first year with Marshall was last year, and I mean, they were good. They weren't great. They were competitive at least, but that's what he did. He talked about how positive the culture change had been. So they blew out their opponent last week. I forget who they played. I'm gonna use my cheat sheet again and pull that up because that's what I'm doing here, and I don't like not remembering things, man. I mean, I understand there's 131 schools, and I can't remember all these scores, but Norfolk State, yeah, they beat them 55-3 as they should have. So I like that. I like where they're at, and I that is not a line that Notre Dame is definitely going to cover. And it's not because Notre Dame's bad. I just think that coming off of that loss, the way that they did it to Ohio State, they're competitive. They couldn't score. They couldn't move the ball in the second half. Marcus Freeman's going to have to shake this quick. This whole I don't coach or adjust well into the second half narrative really fast, because now in both of his first two games, he's blown first half leads. So I think that Marshall is a much better team than that. And I think I don't think that's a lock for Notre Dame to cover. If you want to take a little bet, I might even put a little bet on it. Not something when I don't like to bet big bunches of money on a game unless I'm absolutely certain. Like last week, the games I was very certain about was Tennessee being covering that spread against Ball State, and I liked Arkansas covering that spread over Cincinnati, and so that was where all my big money bets were. But if I'm doing little bets and stuff like these other games and stuff, if I'm not 100% certain, I'm like, yeah, this is going to happen, I'm throwing like $5, maybe $10 on a bet, on a game. And that's kind of how I bet, so I'll put my big money stuff on the stuff that I'm really confident and really, positive about. And then the other stuff, I just throw $5-10 on it and I just see if I hit it. And if I do, great. If not, it's $5-10, and I've made that back with a few of the other games. That's one that I'm probably going to throw $5-10 on right there is that spread against Marshall. I think that's something that's not a lock. So the other one that I would kind of keep an eye on is Michigan State playing Akron on the Big Ten Network, 4 p.m. Eastern. Michigan State is favored by 34.5. I would definitely keep an eye on that. And I think that I'm not sure they're going to cover that. And it's not because, Michigan State's not a top team. I just don't know if they have the offense to score that many points. You know what I'm saying? Consistently. So last week against Western Michigan, Michigan State kind of struggled a little bit, especially on the offensive side. They didn't put up the points everyone expected them to. They still won 35-3, right? They still won 35-3 or 35-13. So, and this is a team that had lost a lot of weapons. Like they lost their quarterback. He declared way too early. Probably shouldn't have. He tried to enter the draft. That didn't work out for him. Caleb Ellerby. They lost their top receivers. One of them transferred to Ball State. Another one, or I guess Western Kentucky. Another one went to the NFL. Sky Moore. Their running back, he might be back. Ladarius Jefferson, he's probably back. But yeah, so there are pieces that they had that were crucial to that team that were gone. And I think that being considered, Michigan State the expectation should have been that Michigan State was going to score more than they did, and they didn't. And the defense bailed them out a lot too, especially with Jacoby Windman, who had like 5 sacks, the transfer from UNLV. Great player last week. Like just absolutely. They moved him from inside linebacker to outside linebacker, and woo, he was nasty. Just a great pass rusher. So that's kind of my concern, I guess, right? Is can they score that many points? Can they score 35 points and not let Akron score anything? And I think that's kind of the thing. I think I might throw $5 on that spread too, just because, I don't know about that one. That just seems like something that that might not be covered. Now, Michigan is favored by 52 over Hawaii this week. And I honestly might put it on Michigan. Hawaii's had a really rough offseason, guys. We really got to cut them some slack. It's going to take them a couple of years to come back. It was that bad. Just having all the stuff come out about the head coach. I forget if it was Todd Graham or if it was somebody else. I don't remember who the head coach was off the top of my head. But there were issues with the way he was running the culture, the way he treated the players. They called him out for it. He apologized, and then they started losing players like crazy, right? I guess he demonized the player was the report, was that had spoken out after transferring. And these players started transferring out like crazy. And it was mass exodus, and it kind of forced Hawaii to do something about it. And so they decided to let him go. They brought in Timmy Chang, their star quarterback from the early 2000s. And I think he's going to build the right culture. He's going to bring the local kids into the school like they want. And, he's going to bring in good guys. And that's kind of the thing is it's like, Chang, it's going to take time to replace all the talent that left and to build the culture back and this and that. So Michigan's got a really good shot to cover 52 over Hawaii. That's crazy. Like normally you see any number over 40. If it's not Alabama, you bet on it. That's normally how it goes. But I think Michigan will be starting J.J. McCarthy at quarterback instead of Cade McNamara. This is big because McCarthy's a runner. The top running back that Michigan is running this year is Blake Quorum. And I'm telling you what, Blake Quorum is going to be a great NFL running back one day. This dude runs like a 4.24 and is lightning quick. He can play pass protection. He's a receiver out of the backfield. I mean, you want to talk about a near perfect prospect? His size is the only thing that's not good. He's like 5'6" and I guess 200 pounds or something like that. But that's the thing is he'll get knocked by the NFL for his size, but he does everything that you ask him to do. I was blown away by his pass protection. I was like, this guy's 5'6". He shouldn't be blowing up linebackers coming through gaps like this. He's a great pass protector. He's a great he's a great receiver out of the backfield. He's got lightning fast speed. So McCarthy's a runner. Corum's a runner. Speed on speed. Ability to do a lot of different things. Okay. I think this offense is going to flourish. They looked good when McCarthy was playing last week against Colorado State. So I like Michigan actually covering 52. I'm probably going to throw $5 on that too. So That might be a little bit wild of me to say, but it's true. But that should about wrap up Gridiron Week 2. Mike Huseman will be back next week, and I will be very happy to have him back. I like being able to bounce off of someone and use that to go back and forth better than I like just sitting here rambling on about college football and this guy and that guy. Maybe I'm interesting. I don't know. But I like having someone else there to talk. And so Mike should be back next week. Everything should be back to normal. And yeah, be sure that you check out NFLDraftDiamonds.com for all kinds of great fucking stuff. I mean, like this website is used by NFL people to get all of the little school, small school prospects and all the names they need to know. It's full of interviews. It's full of all kinds of info, news, scouting reports, everything that you could possibly want about small school guys. They're great. Be sure to check them out. Check out that website. Go to it. And the Hula Bowl, we should be having Damon Talbot back on in the next week or two. He should be back on to update us about the Hula Bowl and that process and answer more questions about the planning and everything else that they're doing for that, like he was at week 0. And we appreciate them and everybody that sponsors this podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Appreciate all of you guys. This has been Gridiron Eve. I'm John Vogel. Be sure to follow me at Draft Vogel on Twitter and your favorite platform. I guess I'm on a few of them. And be sure to follow Mike Huseman at Huseman CFB. That's Huseman CFB. Great Twitter account. That dude has an incredible knowledge of the transfer portal. So I'm telling you, like, you think I know college football? You think that I know football and I talk about stuff? This dude makes me feel insignificant when he starts talking about the transfer portal. That's why I had to get him on here with him. I can't wait till he's back next week. But that's Gridiron Eve, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.